G'day people, and happy St Paddy's Day from quite a hot Portland, Vic. There. It's quite a hot day here in Vic, in Portland, Vic, and this room faces west, so getting a lot of afternoon sun. It's really quite hot. Now, apart from drinking Guinness, St Paddy's Day, Ireland, one of the many countries in the world that absolutely love potatoes. And I certainly love potatoes. So today I'm going to make, and I've got a shitload of potatoes. I've just been digging in the garden. I've got so many potatoes that I'm not going to do with them all. But I'm going to make, this is a really good way to use up potatoes, scallop potatoes. Fantastic. And every man, woman and their dog Sarah has got a recipe for scallop potatoes. There's that many recipes, I think, and every single recipe is different, right? So, I mean, people make them with milk, people make them with the cream, people, I don't know, you can look it up for yourself. Lots of different ways to make scallop potatoes. The only thing they've got in common is they all get put into the oven and baked with some sort of dairy, milky thing around them, to some extent. So yeah, I do that, but in my case, I'll make a cheese roux, and I will warm up the spuds in the cheese roux before putting them in the casserole dish, and then putting them in the oven to do their thing. So we'll start by slicing a lot of spuds. So I've got a kilo of spuds here from the garden. Now you can peel them if you wish. I can't be bothered. In the case of scallop potatoes, it's debatable whether you want to peel them or not. You certainly can peel them. It certainly doesn't wreck them. They're good peeled, but are they better peeled? Not necessarily. So these were dug out of the garden, so they were dirty. They were dirty this morning, but I've rinsed them off, and what I do is I sponge them. I rinse them under a cold tap to get rid of most of the dirt, and then I carefully sponge them to get rid of the rest of the dirt. And it works. That's clean enough. If you do that, you won't taste. You shouldn't have any grit in your potatoes. If you do, you're doing something wrong. If I find a potato with a dodgy spot that seems a bit too dark, you know, like maybe there's some dirt in there, or there's a bit of a wound, a hole with some dirt in it, I'll just cut it out. I'll just cut it out. Like, I mean, I can cut that little bit out there. Not that that's actually a problem, but just for the sake of the argument, illustration, just when you're slicing them up, just cut out any bits that look a bit dodgy. Fresh spuds. All the things you can do with spuds, right? You make chips. You can make scallop potatoes. You can mash them. All of you who haven't seen my chocolate mashed potato video, go and have a look at that. That'll change the colour of your day. Try, have a look at it, make it. Unbelievable. Chocolate and peanut mashed potatoes. Incredible. That is thinking outside the square, I say. I say it's thinking outside the square. So really, really easy to make scallop potatoes, which is why, I suppose, why so many people do it. And they're so damn delicious, you know. Like, roast potatoes are delicious anyway, but when you do them scalloped, when they're surrounded by dairy, and you know, sometimes they have cheese, sometimes they don't. They've often got some cheese in them, and they just acquire all this flavour, this beautiful flavour that really complements the roasted potatoes. Well, obviously if you put them in the oven and they're covered in some sort of quasi-liquid, it's not quite the same as a real roast, but you know, they're still in the oven, so you can argue that it's a roast. That's another thing, you know, potatoes, you can roast them. You can dry roast them, you can, of course the roast potatoes are great with a bit of fat. So you can, you know, they're unbeatable when they're in the dripping from a roast. Roast lamb dripping or roast beef dripping, fantastic. Well, you know, a lot of people like them with duck dripping. There's a lot of fat if you like duck dripping. So, a kilo of spuds. Great way to use up the spuds. I mean, a kilo of spuds is a fair bit. So, if you want to eat a lot of spuds, it's a good way to do it. I'm also a fan of microwaving spuds. I think microwave spuds are great. Really like them. And I can often have, I'll have microwave spuds for lunch, and I'll have at least 300 grams of spuds. You know, it makes a good amount for lunch, 300 grams. Depending how much toppings you're going to put on them, 300 grams is really good. I mean, if you're really hungry, you'd have more than 300 grams. Alright, so that's the spuds sliced. I mean, they're not super thin. Different people have different ideas when it comes to how thin they slice their spuds for scallop potatoes. Some people like them really, really thin. Whatever, you know, whatever floats your boat. I don't believe it's necessary to have them super thin, but it does depend on the technique you're using. Like I'm bathing them in a roux, right? So my technique's not the same as people who use different techniques. So I'm just going to dice this onion, decent sized onion. Dice it up. And then we'll just fry it up in butter and make a roux. And we'll add the potatoes, bring them up to heat, and then throw them in a casserole dish in the oven and relax. Simple as that. Now then a knife. Grab a knife. Grab a knife. Probably about 2 tablespoons of butter. About what we've got there actually. It's probably about right. Man, butter and potatoes, you know, marriage made in heaven. Potatoes and butter are just great. Anyone who's ever made mashed potato knows that. Every kid who's ever been served up mashed potatoes with sausages or whatever for evening dinner, if there's butter on the table, I bet you they're adding butter to it. Right, throw that in. Put in the onion. Like so. I'm going to throw in some garlic. You don't need to, it's not compulsory. I like it. You can like it or not, depending on what you want. Depending on who you are, I like it. I mean, you know, garlic and butter is a classic combination. Garlic and butter just goes really well together. There's a fair bit of butter in this and other dairy products. So, you know, you can like it or not, depends what you want. I should probably just use the garlic mincer, you know, but I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered going to the drawer to dig out the garlic mincer either. Plus, then you got to wash it, you know, and then it doesn't mince everything. There's always some stuff left behind, and, well, you know, whatever. Probably on another day I would actually use the mincer. Today I can't be bothered, you know, whatever. So, all good. Wash those hands. So, we've got a thing called a tablespoon in this country, which I believe is 20 mils. Now, can you spot the tablespoon? This is a dessert spoon. I'm not sure what a dessert spoon is in mils. This is a bastard thing, which calls itself a tablespoon, but is not a tablespoon. That, not a tablespoon. This is a tablespoon. Look at the differences. I might even take a close-up of this just to prove the point. Right, dessert spoon. Use it for eating your Weet-Bix. Pretend tablespoon. Throw it out. Useless. Real tablespoon, 20 mils. So, there they are. Don't be confused. This is not this. They are two different things. But they pretend to be the same thing. Anyway, just a pet whinge. Pet whinge. I mean, the people that invented this, what the hell was going through their minds? So, people buy cutlery, or you go to the shop and buy a quote tablespoon, and you get this, and it's not a tablespoon. You make something with it, and you haven't got enough, because it's the wrong unit. Fucking idiots. Excuse my French. You can buy the real thing. You can buy it. It's called a tablespoon. You can buy it. So, this thing's 15 mil. It's 3/4 of a tablespoon. It's not a tablespoon. So go to a shop that sells culinary stuff. Get a real one. Make sure it's 20 mil. Alright, now I'm going to use this to measure the flour. To make a roux, we want a tablespoon and a half, heaped tablespoon and a half. That's 1. And a half. So I get 2 tablespoons of butter and a tablespoon and a half of a heaped tablespoon and a half. So I suppose if you were making a level, it would be 2 level tablespoons. But I never use level tablespoons, never. Because a level tablespoon is an unnatural action. When you stick your when you stick a spoon into the flour, You stick it in, you pull it out, it's always heat. It's always heat. It's never level. So if you want it to be level, you're going to have to scrape it off with a knife or something. But I can't be bothered, mate. Just calibrate my stuff. And, you know, some cayenne, you know, maybe as much as you like that's probably about 3/4 of a teaspoon cayenne. I like a bit of chilli. You know, chilli is not part of traditional Irish cuisine, but who cares? Who cares? Not even the Irish. Why would they care? I mean, it's not like the Irish invented potatoes. They didn't even know about potatoes until, whatever it was, 1600. And Columbus came back from South America bearing a load of potatoes and blew everyone's mind. God, think of the stuff that he came back with. Imagine Europe in the days before Columbus came back from America. There was no potatoes, no tobacco, no tomatoes. I don't think there was any chili. Am I wrong about that? But anyway, definitely no potatoes and no tomatoes. I mean, what a different, and no corn? Did they have maize? Did Europeans have maize? I don't know. Maybe not. So, you know, ask yourself, what were the Europeans eating? What were the Irish eating before Columbus? Not potatoes. Not potatoes. Probably a lot of cabbage. A lot of cabbage. Wheat. And a lot of meat. A lot of meat wandering around the hoof in those days. Population was much less. There was a lot more arable land available for anyone to use. Much more available. And so there was a lot more meat roaming around on the hoof. Now I've got about 80 grams of cheese here. About 80 grams of cheese. The idea of this roux is it should be, it shouldn't be too firm, but it should be a bit firm, but not too firm. It's not really critical how firm it is, because you're just going to be covering potatoes anyway, and the potatoes will cook in it regardless, and whether it's dry or whether it's runny, not going to be too critical. I mean, yeah, I mean some people, a lot of people just do they just bake them in milk, you know. So it's not critical. Alright, so when it's, and I'll get the phone, let's have a look. So this particular roux is a bit sloppy, but it's okay. I mean, it's a little bit more sloppy than I would normally make, but that's it. I discovered what else is wrong with this idiot interface, thank you Motorola. You actually have to press the record button twice. That's why I keep making this mistake. What a bunch of idiots. Why would you design something where you have to press the button twice? I mean, you have to be an absolute moron to design that. If you're listening, the person that designed Motorola video recorder interface, you're a moron. Alright, now I'll put in at least half of it. Should I put the whole lot in? No, put it all in. All good. Put it all in. Now we want some salt. There is salt, of course, in the cheese, but we'll put another, just one salt spoon. You can always add more salt later if you wish. Now this consistency is looking really good now. Looking really good. It's thick but not too thick. The main thing it has to do at this point, dip in your spuds. The main thing it has to do is to coat all these spuds. So that's the challenge. We want to coat all these spuds in that roux. So you need enough roux to coat all the spuds. Now if you know anything about baking spuds, you'll know that they contain a lot of water. They contain a lot of water, so you don't need to add too much liquid, because liquid will come out of the spuds. All I'm trying to do here is coat them and bring them up to temperature. I want them to be warm, or as close to boiling point as possible without burning the roux on the bottom of the pan. I want to bring them up to temperature, put them in the casserole dish, and then bake them. And if you bring them up to temperature before you put them in the casserole dish, it'll be a lot quicker. They'll bake a lot quicker. Believe me, a lot quicker. Now the same is true if you're roasting potatoes in the oven for your Sunday roast. It's the same story. If you parboil your spuds before you put them in the roasting tray, they will roast a lot quicker because the inside will already be up to temperature. They won't be cooked when you put them in, but they'll be hot. And then it's just a matter of the oven keeping the heat up to them, and they cook. But if you don't do that, if you don't parboil, you put them in and they're cold, and the middle's cold. So it takes quite a long time for the oven to get the heat penetrating right into the core of the potato. Because convected heat that's carried by air, is much less efficient than conducted heat, just heat carried by water. So you submerge your potato in water, the inside of that potato will warm up way quicker than putting it into a hot oven. Because the hot oven, the heat is transferred by air contact. It's nowhere near as efficient. Nowhere near as efficient. I can taste a little bit. I mean, it's not even cooked, but I can taste a little bit of garlic and a little bit of cayenne, just on the tip of my finger from where the spoon's been touching the potato or the roux. And this is working. This is working. Like when you first put the roux in, you think, oh, it'll never coat all that potato. There was so much potato, right? So many slices, it'll never coat it all, but it does. It does. And you can really, like, you can get in there with your spoon and make sure that every slice of potato is separated from the next slice to make sure that each slice is coated, individually coated. I mean, this doesn't happen. A lot of people with their scallop potatoes, they just put them in and whack the milk or whatever over the top, and the slices, they just rely on the slices naturally absorbing enough milk to get in between the layers, but you don't get the really big separation of the layers that you will with this style. That'll pretty much do anyway. I think it'll pretty much do. Don't want to get too obsessed with this stuff. It's St. Paddy's Day after all. Let's just get it made. I mean, it's gonna be good no matter what happens. I mean, just a matter of putting it in the oven for long enough. Casserole dish. Tip the coated spud. See how it's all coated? Tip it in. Now I know this, I made up this recipe. I make up most of my recipes. If not all of them, I make up most of them. Sometimes quite often I'll base my recipes on other people's recipes. Not always, sometimes they're completely in my invention from scratch. But in the case of something like this, I looked at what other people have done, and then decided, bugger it, I'll just go my own way. I'll just go my own way, I thought. So that's what this is. But anyway, I've made this a lot. It's just it uses a kilo of spuds. It just uses them up. It tastes great. Tastes great. You know, what's not to love? So, fantastic. And you know, really, very easy. Put the lid on, put it in the oven. 200 degrees Celsius for an hour, is it? I think my recipe says half an hour with the lid on and then half an hour with the lid off. So an hour altogether. So I'll come back in an hour when it's all done and we'll have a look. Alright, it's St. Paddy's Day, and while I'm waiting for this scallop potato casserole to bake to a happily cooked state in the oven, I think it's time for some Irish music. And what could be more Irish than a slip jig? Nothing is the answer to that question. Nothing. And this one is called The Kid on the Mountain. Okay people, the moment you've been waiting for, the denouement. Scallop potatoes, Martian style. Are they any good? Well, I can tell you that they smell like roasted spuds. That's what they smell like from where I'm standing. They totally smell like the business. Now we just... Now of course the dark bits, the crunchy bits are obviously always the most delicious. Always the most delicious. Now often scallop potatoes are often an accompaniment for other things, but if you do them with enough flavour like this, they don't need to be. They're good on their own. Anyway, let's have a as we go. So hit it once. Oh, now we hit it once and it works. Sometimes it's twice, sometimes it's once. A load of garbage. I've got those the nice colour on the top, crunchy bits. Here's the what's on the plate. Oops, we're steaming up the lens. Don't do that. Steaming up the lens. See the colours. We can see the creamy remains of the roux. The roux's in there, but it's not mostly roux, it's mostly potato. So, what's it taste like? You know what this tastes like? But I mean, it's going to sound obvious, it tastes like potatoes. It really does. You're really tasting potatoes. Yeah. So delicious. It's potatoes, you know, kind of the ideal potatoes, really. Are just nicely cooked, beautifully cooked. They're still a little bit firm, you know, they're not, because they've been baked, not boiled, they're not mashed into mash. They've still got that structure of a potato, you know, that you really know about. You have a good roast potato, you really know the structure. You've got this roux, right? But like I said, the roux is not the main thing. The roux just there to add a nice little bit of extra spice, and a nice little bit of creaminess, and a nice little bit of flavour, you know, to really balance with the potato, to harmonise with the potato. There's a little bit, I just put a little bit of cayenne pepper in, you know. Could even go more, like I put in like 1 level teaspoon, but it could even go more. Wow. So the cayenne is very, very faint. It's only just there. It's not a focal thing at all. But you know, you can put a bit more in if you want. But I like it just a little bit there in the background, you know. And like the salt, I'll just put 1 salt spoon in the whole thing. All the other salt is from the butter. And that's it, you know, that's all the salt there is. And potatoes need salt, but there's just enough salt. Just. I'm telling you, this is really... Like, if anyone can make better scallop potatoes, come and show me. Because they've really got the character of the potatoes. You know, sometimes people drown their scallop potatoes in milk or cream or whatever. They drown them. These are not drowned. Just the roux is in the background. It's not the foreground. The potatoes are in the foreground. And they smell and they taste like roast potatoes, but they're kind of creamy. But not too creamy. You're not really tasting cream. You're still tasting potato. Now you can see there's a black bit here. I just know that's going to be fantastic. I mean, the spuds have they've been in the oven for an hour, and I brought them up to temperature in the pot before I put them in the casserole dish. But those potatoes, they've still got their structure. They're really still, they're quite firm. They're not hard or anything. Not hard. They're definitely properly cooked. But we've just got enough firmness so that you know the structure. So good. I mean, you don't need anything else with them. So good. Now, admittedly, these came out of my garden, so they do have a lot of flavour. Like if you buy, now compared to ones you buy from the supermarket, if you've ever thought of growing your own veggies, just do it. And don't think about it, just do it. And the easiest thing to grow, unless you've got some really weird climate, easiest thing to grow is potatoes. They just look after themselves. I mean, they're basically a weed. Truly, they're a weed. Once you plant them, you won't be able to get rid of them. The lazy weed of Ireland. Anyway, this is the way I do them. It's different to probably the way most people do them. This way, they're firm, but they're cooked. They taste like roast potatoes. They've got the roux behind them, but they're not drowned in it. They're not drowned in it. So they're just fantastic. They taste like potatoes, but really good potatoes. They've got all this extra stuff. A bit of salt, just enough salt, and just enough chilli, and just enough roux. Oh, I just got a little taste of garlic there. Excellent. So, if you're looking for a new recipe to try for scallop potatoes, give it a go. Great way to use up potatoes. If you can grow your own potatoes, so much the better. Good luck, people.